So our very first thing we're going to get into is the coaching carousel. We have four different Big Ten teams, I guess three Big Ten teams right now, and one that's coming next year that have some coaching news going into them. Michigan State obviously has been looking for their coach for a while. There's been tons of rumors, nothing really kind of concrete out there. Some news came out today about possible Tony Elliott. I know Michigan State fans weren't too happy about that. The rumor before was Urban Meyer. So when you go from Urban Meyer to Tony Elliott, it's like not really the best transition. And then we have Northwestern, who they just hired David Braun. The UCLA rumor is that Chip Kelly is going to be fired after the USC game. And then, of course, Michigan. What's going on with Michigan? Is Michigan going to have Harbaugh at the end of the year? Are they going to move on from them? Is the NCAA going to force them to move on from them? We'll kind of talk about that for a minute first, but I'm going to go ahead and send this to Anthony first. Anthony, what are some of your thoughts on the coaching carousel in the Big Ten right now?
Well, I'll start with the Michigan State one. Tony Elliott is not a serious name. I'm just going to get that out there right now. I'm assuming everyone's got to have a safety net when they're interviewing, and he would probably be Michigan State's. I also don't think there's that much smoke to Urban Meyer. That's just my 2 cents. I'll probably get some flack for saying that, but I think a lot of the other usual suspects whose names you hear, the Mike Elkos of the world, I think they're much more realistic on who we land at this point. So yeah, I mean, Tony Elliott, whatever. I'm not taking. I don't think there's any smoke behind that one. On the other ones, I've talked ad nauseum about what I think Michigan's, what's happening with Harbaugh. I think he's sick of the NCAA. I think he's gone next year. Northwestern's was interesting. There was a lot of, similar to Michigan State, they had a lot of off the field scrutiny for the program, and they did what Michigan State could not and rebounded really nicely during the season. They had an interim step in with David Braun, and he took a team that had a pretty scary start to the year and really, has put him in a spot to, potentially make a bowl game. So I think it's good that he gets a shot. After having Pat Fitzgerald there for so long, I kind of wonder who else, where else do you go? He was kind of your mainstay for so long. So, I mean, I'm glad to see, I'm happy for David Braun that he's done so well in the situation that he was put in.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Northwestern one is kind of the biggest news and the news that people are kind of happiest for because, he's probably going to be at least in contention for Big Ten Coach of the Year, especially if he wins another game and gets to a bowl. I think, in my personal opinion, you almost have to give it to him after that. Max, what are some of your thoughts about the coaching carousel in the Big Ten right now?
Yeah, to start with the Northwestern one, like you said, Anthony, the David Braun has had a great year. I mean, it was already looking bleak for Northwestern with Fitzgerald. To lose their head coach, to have the roster that they do, and to play in the Big Ten, like it was going to look tough. It was going to look like a maybe 1-2 win season. For them to rip off some of the wins they've had with their roster that they've had is really impressive. So good for David Braun. I'm glad he gets a shot. And actually, shout out to Winona State University. That's my alma mater. That's where he went to school. He played football there, coached there for a time. So kind of cool to see a Division II football player make it into the Big Ten. Yeah, with Michigan, it is hard to see Harbaugh coming back, especially I think if they win the national championship. I don't know why he would stay. He's kind of accomplished everything he wanted to in the collegiate level. So if he wins it all or makes a deep run, I think he'll say, all right, well, see ya. Don't want to deal with this anymore. It's kind of hard to blame him too. He's had a lot of crap thrown at him, especially this year. But yeah, it is hard to see him come back. UCLA, Chip Kelly. That one actually surprised me. I know they've been stagnant a little bit there at UCLA, but it is a tough place. I mean, with USC, with the way the Pac-12 is, it is they're not the premier school or program they've used to be, but Chip Kelly has always kind of seemed like a big name. But the rumor I've been reading about actually that the donors didn't love him or haven't loved him lately, and with the era of NIL and donors being the key to the big money, if they're not going to be donating and giving their support, then if it's Chip Kelly standing in the way, then he's got to go. So it makes sense if that's really the case.
I do kind of wonder if that's going to affect Dante Moore and what he, does he stick around if Chip Kelly's not going to be there? He's an offensive-minded guy. Is Dante Moore in the transfer portal? And then where does he go?
Of course, in the drama with Dante Moore about the NIL deal and he's not making the money that he thought he was and that kind of stuff, I feel like Dante Moore is, he's gone after this year. You mess up an NIL deal nowadays, and I mean, we all saw what happened with Jaden Rashada at Florida. He's over at Arizona State now. I mean, once you mess that up, it kind of feels like you're kind of done with that player for good because NIL is just such an important thing. I heard the same thing that you did, Max, about Chip Kelly just not really working well with the donors and some of those people. But it kind of makes sense if you think about it. Chip Kelly has always been more of an X's and O's guy. I mean, he had that big success when he was at Oregon. But when you think about it, like, Oregon was doing so many things for Chip Kelly there, right? Like, that was right when Oregon was getting innovative with the Nike stuff. Chip Kelly was being super innovative with his offense. At the time, there was no NIL, and Chip Kelly had a lot of good recruiters with him on that staff that made a big difference. And so everything just kind of fell into place for him there. And then obviously he goes off to the Eagles, and he does some good things there, but ultimately, he's out of the NFL and back to college football. I could really see Chip Kelly just like going off and doing one of these analyst roles or something like that, like somewhere where he can just like live and breathe X's and O's, doesn't have to worry about recruiting, doesn't have to, be the phone guy and mess with the, the donors and the AD and all those things. Like, it's like, just sit him at a desk, let him do X's and O's, and he's going to draw up some really good plays for your guys, so yeah, but
And to that point, I feel like
yep.
head coaches nowadays in college football are kind of asked to be a CEO more than anything. Like, they really just have to be aware of everything, and they get involved in a lot of administrative stuff. So for someone who is an X's and O's guy, I could see him not wanting to do that.
Yeah, I think so too. The other guy that I think he's going to struggle with trying to keep his job, and I don't even know if it's because of his university, is Jim Harbaugh. I just can't imagine he comes back to Michigan, like you guys were saying. I don't see a place for him to be able to come back, not necessarily because Michigan's going to be mad at him. Obviously, the Michigan fans and the Michigan administration and everything is rallying behind him. But I just feel like in February or March, when all this NCAA stuff drops, either he's going to get some kind of show cause and be out, or something's going to happen to where, it's like, it's just not worth it for him anymore. Is he really going to want to deal with, a bowl ban and scholarships? I'm not saying that stuff's going to happen, but if any of that stuff does happen, does he really want to deal with that? Especially if he wins the national championship this year, it's like, you can just go to the NFL, be a defensive coordinator, be a head coach, and, those jobs are going to be much more available if you win a national championship. So, I really don't know what Michigan will do from there. I would think that probably Sherrone Moore would take the job. I think if you get hit with some penalties, it would be really, really difficult to try and go out and get a big name. The name that I've heard the most, Max, I don't know if you like it or not, but the name I've heard the most is PJ Fleck. If anything happens, it's one of those things where it's like, I don't really see it, but I guess other people do. But it is what it is. Do you have any thoughts on that, Max?
I don't see Michigan replacing the winged helmets with winged oars soon. So I don't know if PJ Fleck would even be about that.
That's very true. That's very true. Row the boat, not flap the wings.
Sherrone
What were you
Moore
gonna say,
had
Anthony?
kind of a couple of chances to audition, really, for the role.
Yeah.
And, he had some early in the season where he got to coach, but going on the road against Penn State and then getting some run against Ohio State later on, like, these are games where he can audition for his coaching job next year. And I think he's proven himself pretty capable, even if they don't beat OSU, but like show up in a big way. I think Sherrone Moore still is very likely the guy next year.
Yeah, I think
if Harbaugh does go, right.
Max, your buddies over at Sky U are saying, have at him. Not too happy with PJ. And then our boy Sonny, bring Harbaugh to the Bears. Hey, I would love to see Harbaugh and Justin Fields together. That would be very interesting. Unless Harbaugh comes in and then just cuts Justin Fields and brings in JJ McCarthy. I guess that's also an option. But all right, any more comments on coaching carousel, anything like that, guys? Nope. All right.
One thing I will say, even though it's not Big Ten related, I had one. Sorry. Well, even though it's not Big Ten related, I think the A&M job opening up hurts anybody Michigan State was one of the bigger jobs that was available now. Now that A&M's open, I think they might not necessarily get their first pick anymore, just based on the bag that we know A&M can throw.
Yeah, for sure. And I even saw some people saying that the Mississippi State job was a better job than Michigan State right now. And I was like, no, it's not. It's not nearly as good. That you really want to go be a
it's an
punching
SEC
bag
job, so it's an SEC job. So from that perspective, I see it, but like it's certainly not a better job, maybe an on par job.
Yeah,
For the
that's what I was
fellow
gonna say.
MSU school,
On par at the very least, but I can't see anything with that Mississippi State program that would lead me to believe that it's a better job than Michigan State. I mean, Michigan State has been to the playoffs, right? Yes, these past 2 years have been hard, but Michigan State, they're willing to pay, they're willing to win. Mississippi State, they're not going to win. So